Hansi, Harry Lafon Nishikasun. I come from the Muskeg Lake Cree Nation here in Saskatchewan. I'm currently the Executive Director for the Office of Treaty Commissioner, and I'm also a member of the board for the Saskatchewan Prevention Institute. Now, the purpose of this presentation is to capture the way the elders use to teach the young people about the transitioning from young child to young adult. And they use storytelling as a way to engage these young people so that they understand from their own lives how they are to move from one stage into the next. Sexuality is a special gift from the Creator, and it brings the ultimate gift of children. As children move from birth to child, and from child to young adult, and from adult to elder, there are ceremonies to prepare them as they move from one stage to the next stage. It is through these teachings and these ceremonies that they learn to live in harmony and to lead a balanced life.
Who in the family and community is responsible for teaching girls and young women about their sexual nature and maturing into young adulthood?
In our tradition, in our culture, it was always the mothers and the grandmothers, especially the grandmothers.
You can father children, but most importantly, not just be a father, but be a parent. The most important thing in a relationship of a man and a woman is learning how to become a parent. Parenting is a difficulty. It's a difficulty of doing it right, and you can only learn that at the disposal of these three very important individuals: the grandfathers, the mother and fathers, and the Okichitak and the Okskabersak.
We hope this presentation will empower the young people and the elders to reconnect with their traditional values, with their traditional ceremonies, to understand the transition from one stage to another stage as part of their sexual maturation. We encourage young people to seek help and advice from the elders, from their families, their mothers and their fathers, their older brothers, their older sisters, and in this way understand the importance of their community as a support system as they grow from one stage into the next stage.
When I was growing up with my grandparents, they used to take me to the bush, way out in the bush, where a place there's no sound or anything, just the wild animals and stuff like that. They leave me there for 4 days and 4 nights without food, water, nothing. They call it fasting. There you see things that you never see in your life. You learn things that you never know before. You hear things that you never heard before. You're not alone. You're surrounded with all kinds of spirits with you.
The teachings was that never to disrespect their body and to keep it safe, to protect it, to protect themselves, and not to hurt it in any way, I guess. And today we see a lot of hurting young women that are lost and have lost their ways, and it's time that we, the knowledge keepers and the elders, help our young people in getting them back into their safe journey.
Now, if you have a drinking problem or thinking about suicide, talk to somebody. If you keep that to yourself, eventually, I see that a lot of times, and these young people are committing suicide. It seems like there's no place for them to go, but there is places to go. You have to talk to an elder. How you're feeling, what you're going through. Don't be scared to go out there and get help. and work on yourself. This is the message I'd like to pass on to these young people.
This presentation is representative of 4 of the 8 First Nations in Saskatchewan: the Plains Cree, the Dene from the north, the Nakota or Saulteaux from the east, and the Nakota and the Dakota. Now, these First Nations share some common beliefs and they share some common practices in their ceremonies, but they nevertheless are of different peoples, and their diversity comes through in how they teach their young people.
You people used to tell us, in your life, you will light a fire 7 times. That's how they described it. And today it's interpreted as 7 stages of life, or the 7 fires of life.
There's one story I heard. There was a test that they did in the Assiniboines. There was three tests that you had to pass. One was that you were given a rope and you were given a wild Mustang, and you had to tame that wild Mustang to ride it. Once that feat was done, your next test was that you find a badger and you try to kick it in the ass while it's running the other way. And the other one, and then the third one was that if a fire like that, you take a hot log and then you put it out in your hand. And then if you did pass those 3 tests, then you would become a man. Now, I don't know how true that is, especially the kicking of the badger in the ass.
The 9 months that we carry our children, very spiritual. It originated to the clan mothers. There are 13 of them, 13 clan mothers, but the 9 should be working here on earth. That's why the woman was given 9 months to bear the children in their body. And it's very important that I teach my children, my grandchildren, and my great-grandchildren these, because the clan mothers, they are the ones that sit with the law. So of course I have to teach them. That's part of child rearing.
The oral history shared by the memory keepers is a living collection of our worldviews, our languages, our values, our laws, and our ceremonies. The elders have agreed to share with us their wisdom and their knowledge on film. It is a legacy for the young people that they teach, but it's also a legacy for the generations to come.
So to me, I think oral teaching is very important to us First Nations people. That was the way we learned many of our ways of life, our prayers, our spirituality. And I always like to refer to the young people that they have to be strong. They have to understand. They have to have that true belief in themselves and in everything around them. And that's the only way that they live a good way of life.
My name is Sylvia McAdam. I am from the Big River First Nation, and I am here to talk about the creation of the birth, the human birth, how the Creator gave the human birth to the First Nations of these territories. Especially this teaching comes from the Cree people, the Nihiawak of the Treaty 6 territory and of Saskatchewan. The Creator resides in an area where it's powerful and sacred. When we are born into our human birth, we begin when we were living with the Creator. And when we're getting prepared to be born into our human birth, we are taken to a place where there's a flame. It looks like the sun, but it's called the Creator's flame. And we're taken to that area. And when we go to that area, we take a little bit of that fire, and we take a little flame, and we pick from that fire, and we take that flame, and we put it on the top of our head, and it becomes our soul flame. And when we begin to make our journey to the earth, this soul flame becomes a part of our body. And then that is when it's decided whether you will become male or female and what nation you will be born into. And you'll be born into the responsibilities and obligations of that nation. And when we go to our human birth, we are born with this soul flame that is a part of the Creator's flame. So each one of us, as we walk on this earth, we carry the soul flame. And because we carry the soul flame, we must respect each other because we are all a part of the Creator. That is how come the term all my relations comes from. We are all related because of the soul flame. And the Cree people believe that we must respect each other because of this Creator's flame. Iksa.
Well, my name is Daniel Musqua, and I'm from Keezagon's Reserve. I've lived there most of my life. I raised my family, my children there. I was raised up by a big family. My father and mother raised a big family. My father's name was Roy. My mother's name was Nellie Brass. And there was 17 of us children in the family, a very Christian mother, very Christian family upbringing with a traditional flair by my father. And I went to school in St. Philip's, did some of my high school in LeBret, and finished my high school in St. Joseph's College in Yorkton. And went home and continued with the farming practices of my father. Raised my children on a farm, came back. In '79, I quit farming. Got my wife to go to university and the rest, and I went back to work, and I came to work in the city for the University of Saskatchewan, where I was a resident elder, and the first of its kind in Canada. And after 7 years, I reached lecturer status there. They gave me an honorary doctorate degree in May 26, 1995, and that's about it.
In Cree, Ohpiginaosuin is the word used to describe raising children. In the Saulteaux world, what word do you use to talk about child rearing?
It's almost the same as we say Ohpiginaosuin. That's means child rearing practices.
Dan, what comes to mind when that word is used?
Well, it reminds me of my grandfather and my grandmother. The whole family structure, that everybody in my family regards the old people as the initial process of family. And of course, it reminds me of my clan system, of what clan I come from. And of course, being a Bear Clan, I'm very much responsible for family and for the care of family and old people. That's my job as a clan member of the Anishinaabe people.
Elders talk about helping children to lead and maintain a balanced life. What does that mean for you?
Well, for me, being raised up in a very traditional family, my mother although she was a Christian, she allowed my father to raise us as traditionally as possible and without losing any of the teachings of that world. I think about the uniqueness of our togetherness our need to remember when the care of the next child to us. And the most important thing is to remember who you are, and to know who you are, and to know a bit about where you come from. You know where you come from, and geographically we come from way up in Ontario, up that area over there in Manitoulin Island, Wisconsin, and those areas over there. But in the terms again, when we talk about creation, where we come from in God's plan of creation, we were created at a certain time in the past, what we call Kisokanya, when time begun. That was when creation took place, and the Creator made the world as it is now. It went through 7 phases, and at the end of the 7th phase, the man arrived, and man was the one to actually look after and care for the earth and all its the essence of life within it. That was man's responsibility. Although God prepared everything for man's arrival before he arrived there, so that it is very important for me to know how I arrived here. And it was in the will of God to make man be the caretaker of his creation. And man was endowed with a spirit that was to be the one that was supposed to be experiencing the physical world. Man is endowed with two components, one spiritual and one physical. The spiritual part is what these grandfathers, when the question was asked about the physical universe, and the Creator said there would be a physical universe, and then you will go and live in it if you must know what time is. And that's the reason why God created the universe of time. And all those beings who wanted to understand time came into this world through the womb. And the womb is the first place of experience that we have in this life. The spirit arrived into the woman's womb, and then it stayed in that woman's womb for 7 weeks before it decided that it would stay within that body. It had that choice to leave that body or continue to live in it. And of course, when it arrived here, the first place it occupied was to go through the well of thoughts, the well of the mind. There's a little well over here, a little gateway in the head. That's where the spirit goes into, implants its journey in that well of the mind, or the memory cells of the memory state of that mind, implants its journey there, then moves to the center at the seventh week. And in the 7th week, it then makes up its mind to stay there. When it makes up its mind to stay there, when it enters into that state of union with the body, it forgets everything it ever knew about where it came from, so that it has to relearn through the physical universe of time. It's bounded by time, and it'll be bounded by time until it learns its way back through this body. So that's what we're told. And of course, life in the womb is very important. It's the first stage of life, life in the womb. That's the first state. It's a very peaceful state. It's the most beautiful state of life you're ever gonna live in. And the old people, the old kokums, and I'm very limited in the teachings of that state of life, but the women are the ones who teach that state, and then they say that the young women are taught everything about how to care for themselves, and of course as men we are also taught about how to relate and how to care for these pregnant women as the future fathers of the community, the future parents of the community. We are taught to care for care and respect for our women. We're taught to give them the best of food that we can possibly afford to give them, and keep them peacefully so that the child will not encounter any grievous impulses of difficulty within the womb. And of course, that's the first stage. And of course, that's a very, very beautiful state. People tell us it's the most beautiful place you ever going to be on the face of this earth. And then, of course, at that state, the women then tell this woman how to prepare herself for birth. This is where, again, as young men, we used to go walking with my mother or aunties or something that were pregnant or going to have babies so they could exercise. And it's the responsibility of the man to take out his wife and help her to exercise so she could prepare for childbirth. And that's very important, exercise and good diet, and that's very, very important. And peace. And of course, when the pregnancy is about to unfold, and this is where then we are told to vacate the building where the child is going to be born, and then the midwives, they come in and they take care of the young mother that's giving birth. Of course, we are trying to be as quiet as possible. If the children are born in winter time, we'd go to another building where we would leave the women alone to bring about the birth of the child. And of course, again, before the birth of the child, I forgot to say that the grandmothers and the old men used to predict whether what the child would be, a boy or a girl, and they'd even make bets, and they'd say, and of course they'd hint very loudly, the right for them to give names to the child. If it's a boy, I'd give him a name like eagle flying above the clouds or something like that. If it's a girl, let's say the woman who walks in the beautiful sunset, things like that. They would hint about the possibility, what names they would give, so that maybe perhaps they'd be chosen to give the name to the child. Then when a child is born, and that's when a different state, that's the second state sets in. The second state is dependency, trust. From the time of birth, you're totally dependent. You're helpless. You're totally like this, hands open, and you can't do anything for yourself. You're totally dependent upon your mother. And at that state, the old women tell us that the child belongs to its mother for the first 2 years of life. And so we do not interfere with the child's relationship with its mother. It's very important that child bonds with that mother right from the onset, right from the birth, right from the time that the child gets out of the body of the mother to this open world of life. That time of experience and relationship is totally the mother and the child. And so then, of course, in that state, us as fathers, we try to relate to the children. We're taught to be so aware of the child's needs and to actually keep the children quiet. If you don't have no grandmother or grandparents to stay with you. In the old days, they used to live all in one big locality in a teepee. But now we live in houses, so that we have to look after these children, our babies, so that mother could be quiet, so that the babies could be quiet. It was very important for the children to be quiet. It's very important for the children to learn how to listen early in life. And the old people talk about the moss bag. The moss bag. I'm not going to talk about that because I wouldn't know what the old people, the old grandmas will tell us, you better stop because you don't know what you're talking about. But it's part of the disciplinary process of the babies early in life. They're wrapped up. I know this, they're wrapped up like this in a moss bag, in that bundle bag, so that they could listen to. They could use their senses, their eyes, their smell, their taste, their hearing, those senses to be sharpened. But when a child is open like that, they open the child up once in a while. That's too much dissipation for the child, so the child cannot use these these four senses that are very important for learning to use them later in life, to be able to judge distance, sound, and smell and taste, that which those senses are sharpened up in that state in that moss bag. That's what they say. That's what the old people say. There's a couple of phases in that first 2 years of life. There's one phase in which a child learns the first initial meanings of what pain and suffering is about at that stage, and that's the teething process when the children have teething, and it's a very uncomfortable process. We can't remember it. We certainly could see it for our children. When we raised up our kids, you see the discomfort and the painful experience that babies have. That's the first experience they have with pain. And of course, the old people tell us that they're going to have to learn how to use and how to understand pain, because they're going to encounter a lot of pain and a lot of trial through life. So they're going to have to learn how to use that. And again, never to leave the child alone. Always to be around the child. If your wife is not there, then you have to be around the child. Make sure that somebody's with the child all the time. And that sense of belonging is so important. That sense of belonging, that sense of family has to be initiated early through the mother. And then of course, then there's the second stage. It's the second state of trial and error, when the child learns how to sit up and crawl. That's a really trial, disappointing exercise. So the little child can't sit up, can't crawl, and you have to be there. And then that's kind of the man's job there. That's kind of the man's job, where you help the child to learn how to sit up, learn how to help the child crawl, by putting your hand under its belly and helping him to crawl, by letting him sit between your knees, so to help him to sit up and move yourself back and find out that she's sitting up by herself or sitting up by themselves, So that's the man's job there. So the relationship and the association starts very early between the parents and the parenting. That's the parenting that's required for a child to develop very, very, very with good rational behavior and good sensible thought, to live balanced in a harmonious way with the environment of the family, the brothers and sisters, and the world around itself. That's so important, that harmonizing and being leveling out, learning to be honest. Eventually the child gets up, enters from that state of trust and that state of dependency. Finally breaks free from that and gets up off the ground and starts walking. And then that's the third state. Now when you get up from walking to 7 and 8 years old, that's the state of freedom. The child is free, and that's a very important notion. That child has to learn that in a very effective and a very wonderful, non-commanding but very effectively helping way to let him understand that freedom is very precious. He's got to learn the boundaries of freedom, the laws of freedom. He's got to learn to obey. You start with the family boundaries. You don't ever walk in front of your grandfather. You don't take away things that are not yours. That child learns to realize that he's part of a larger circle. So from there on in, from the first 2 years of his relationship with his mother, he kind of stops there, continues. He kind of stops it there. It enters into the family, so that he has to learn to fit in harmoniously and peacefully join the family, without disrupting that world. And of course, it takes an entire family to look after that child. That is the most explosive learner on the face of the earth. That's what the is that little child. This child is the most creative learner there is on the face of the earth. And it takes the entire family to look after that child. For 1 minute he's here, the next minute he's over here, the next minute he's there. And if you don't supervise him, you don't take care of him, it'll tear your house apart. You 1 second he's gone and you won't find him, you know, so that you have to be so aware that this child is flying by, is picking up hundreds of pieces of information, and he's always wandering around. In the fourth stage comes in 7 and 8 years old, things change right around. All of a sudden, from being a little boys and little girls, they're just children. They have no awareness of sex and sexuality. They don't have no awareness of that. And all of a sudden, here they are at 7 and 8 and 9 years old. Holy mac! Shirley, who used to beat you up all the time, all of a sudden, holy mac! Shirley's different, you know. My goodness, Shirley's good looking, you know. My goodness, all of a sudden, you want to be close to Shirley all the time. You start feeling your manly and womanly functions starting to kicking in, you know. You start to grow. You grow from childhood into little boys and from little boys and little girls to little men and little women. And here at this stage, they do a lot of copycatting, a lot of mimic. They mimic. They wear your cowboy boots. They want to wear your cowboy hat. They want to wear mama's big long dress. They want to steal their powder and their rouge, and they make themselves. They want to be like adults. You know, like they'll wear your big winter stockings, and they'll do all kinds of hero worshiping. You've seen the old people say, "You be careful what you say and do." At this age, but at 7 to 12 years old, at 7 to 12 years old, that state of growth and then coming into puberty is so important, because these kids are copycatting, they're copying, you got to behave in such a way. It's very important that you behave in those children in the way that you want them to respect themselves and to respect you as a father and as an uncle, as a parent. You remember, those kids they're like that camera there. They're like that camera. They're putting everything in their little heads, and they're judging, and they're analyzing and evaluating your behavior. They're judging you. You're the primary example of the future of their footsteps in life. That's what the old people tell us at that stage. It's very important, and it's very important that you begin to tell them about what it is that they must do. That is so important that you watch and behave where you want that child to be, in a sense of family, a sense of identity, a sense of purpose, an idea of where and what things are going to be like for the rest of their lives. You develop that early in life, in those first 10 years. Young adult stage comes in. All of a sudden, they're 9 years old to 12 years old. All of a sudden, they start to feel differences. The urges of manly and womanly urges are starting to change in their body, and you start to separate them. You start separating them from playing house and playing. You got to supervise their house. They're playing together because they're changing, and the physiology is changing. And then all of a sudden it hits, and the fourth stage is completely finished, and all of a sudden they're there. Puberty hits at 12 years old. It's much easier for the girls because they have their own time. And then there again, already there, we are taught to respect the woman and to keep our distance from them. Not because they're unclean, but because they are in a state of purity, and they're powerful, and they're purifying themselves, getting ready for life. We learn that, and so that the way that we're taught is to respectfully give the women their distance, and the boys us too. We are taught to know that, not to wrestle with our sisters, or not to wrestle anymore, because touching is inappropriate at certain times, Then you stop wrestling with your sisters and you start wrestling with your brothers, So that the relationship begins to change from brother and sister to man and woman, and that process begins. Then of course Then of course, for us, the Anishinaabe and Cree people, our women used to separate themselves. Our young women would be separated, be under the care of an auntie or a grandma or a kukum to teach these young women how to care for herself. And of course, they would cleanse themselves, and she would have to learn the time of ovulation. That was very important. And then of course, the young boys, we find out somehow we were growing up. I remember when I was in school, we used to have big, beautiful choirs in school. And there was us boys, we used to have a choir. And we had beautiful high voices, And I remember loving to sing these beautiful hymns. And one day I couldn't hit a note. I couldn't hit a note. Jeez, I was flabbergasted and I was disappointed. I didn't come to choir practice, and I told I can't sing anymore. Something wrong with my voice. I think my voice is breaking up, I told. And she said, yes, it is. Yes, it is. So you don't have to come back to choir practice anymore. There's another boy over here. We're not kicking you out. You're just growing up. What a nice way, eh? She was very nice about it. You're growing up. An unexpected change of having hair in places you never had hair before. Under your arms, And then of course, and then now, you wonder why. And of course, I had to talk to my dad. Well, you're a man now, my son. You're a man now. Now you have to work like a man. It's time to stop snaring rabbits and cutting wood now, and come with me when I go hunting. You come with me when we're looking after the horses, when I'm working in the fields. You'll have to come with me when I'm chasing the horses and we're breaking up ground. You have to learn how to drive the horses. We used to have a two-bottom plow with 4 horses, and we had to learn that. By 13 and 14, we were driving horses. It's plow. We were doing man's work. You're not a child anymore. You're not a little boy. You're a man. You're a man. And we were treated like men. We were never talked down to by the old. We were taught never to talk down to our children, especially our young men. And same thing with our young women. We were treated like adults. We were young adults. We were treated like adults, and we had to behave as men. We had to respect the old people.
Dan, you've been a father, and now you're a grandfather and a great-grandfather. How does a young man find out about his sexuality? And who's responsible to teach young men to develop a healthy sexual self?
Well, actually, it's the father. But most important, it's the grandfather. Most important, it's the grandfather that teaches. I've done that with my grandchildren. I've done that with my sons. But my father did most of the teachings, my uncle. So those are the ones. I'll give you an example. When I was about 10 years old, I had a little female dog. And I didn't know, I was 10 years old, I didn't know that, so this little, in the springtime, their dogs were breeding, and I come home and I found my dog was stuck with this big dog. And I thought he was hurting my dog, so I took a stick and I nearly beat that dog to death. I was telling my grandma, he's killing my dog. No. It's not that. They're going to produce little ones. So she told my grandfather, well, old man, it's you. You got to tell this boy that, well, it's your grandson. They're kind of debating who was going to tell it. So finally, my grandfather said, well, do you remember this spring when we were branding the cattle and the bull jumped the cow? Yes. Well, they're doing the same thing as these two over here. Like us, we do the same thing. This is where your grandmother has to teach it. So I went to my grandmother, and my grandmother told him, said, well, you were asking me one time when I was changing the diaper of the baby why she was different, and I told you, that's because she's a woman. This is where the baby's going to come out from. And of course, my grandmother said, you have what you call a manly part. You have a manly part. That's what goes into the woman. And that's a very sacred act. We don't talk about that. That's what has to happen. So you now know what it is. And this is very important that you know You know how to respect women because women are our life givers. So that's what it was. And so I've taught my grandchildren, I've taught my sons the same teachings. I use the same, but it's so much more easier today. You have videotapes and you have all this other, but it's not the same as when you hear it from a grandparent. Or it takes away the ownness when you use it, videotapes and stuff like that. The trust and it's so important that you're giving them, you're entrusting them with a very important responsibility of being someday being a father of a co-creative purpose, which is very sacred to our people. That's how I learned. Now you have the responsibility of participating in the community affairs, and you have to go to the meetings now. You have to go to the meetings. You have to be there. And I remember the band meetings. We used to go to band meetings, and there's a Scabell stuck outside over there. We couldn't really even get back inside there. Go and listen to the old people. There's a meeting going on. Go and listen to them. We couldn't run around today. Like today, we have band meetings. There's kids running around all over the place, raising hoopla, you know. But when we were kids during band meetings, we couldn't run around. If we didn't listen, they chased us out. They chased us home. Well, Shkabe was the first character of authority. Those Shkabeos were really very important. They were the organizers and the ones that kept the community going by looking after the responsibilities of communal work. You know, like water had to be brought to widows and old people. They're the ones who assigned the authority, and they're the ones who became the leaders eventually. They became leaders in the chief and council eventually. But they were very important, these Shkabeosak. They were the authority, and they were the ones who would order you, even despite your parents would be sitting there, and your mother and your father wouldn't say a thing. Hey, you come over here, come here. You go and help that old lady. Take her stuff off the wagon. You go over there now. No questions asked, because that was the respectable authority that young man or this man held in the community. It's fifth stage. It's all about learning communal responsibility and beginning your journey into the community, from the family to the community, and then the community responsibility to the national responsibility. And all the time, always being under the watchful eye of somebody with authority. They were responsible people. They had authority, and they were listened to, because there had to be order. There had to be this sense of order in the community, a sense of order, a sense of purpose, a sense of identity, a sense of usefulness. That had to be the paramount, because if you didn't keep these kids active, if you didn't remind them of their responsibilities, you know, they could fall apart. And then, of course, you enter the world of marriage and career, which is the sixth stage. All of a sudden, you got married, and in those days, there was arranged marriages that used to happen between families. It happened as recently as 1940, but most of the marriages that took place were marriages that took place within this meaning of a relationship with other family members. And so all of a sudden, here you are as a married member of the family. You're married, you have a family, and then you realize you're set and prepared. If you went through those 5 stages with the help of the parents and the Ogitstocks and the Oskabeosak helping you along the way, you would be able to look after a family. You'll be able to look after children. You can father children, but most importantly, not just be a father, but be a parent. The most important thing in a relationship of a man and a woman is learning how to become a parent. Parenting is the difficulty. It's the difficulty of doing it right, and you can only learn that at the disposal of these 3 very important individuals: the grandfathers, the mother and fathers, uncles, and the Ogichatak and the Oskabeosak. Those 3 groups of people were very important to keeping the community alive and well at all times. That was community operation. And as you were an adult, you were there to attend to the meetings and listen to the organizations of the community's relationship. You know how you're going to help the Sundance holders, how you're going to help the baseball kids that are playing baseball, hockey school. The importance of the community is so apparent right from the onset. That a healthy community is healthy when the young people learn the disciplines of care, harmonizing with one another and the harmony with the natural world, and their responsibility of looking after the old people, looking after the widows and the single parents, looking after the handicapped, looking after the three important things: food, water, and fire to keep the house warm. And then of course there's the old age. There's the seventh final stage of life. There's three phases to that old age, to the old, not the old age, the old. We have our community leaders, our community elders. Our community elders were people that were 35 and over, maybe 40 years and over, that had children that finished raising their children. Sense of family, a sense of community, a sense of home life. You know, you don't have that, and you have to understand that in order to run a community, in order to help a community live healthy, in order that good children will be raised properly and with a good viable future coming into their world through the community efforts of these people. In those days, chiefs and headmen were appointed by families. There was not an elective system, there was a selective system in those days. So I guess that's the reason why the politics of today doesn't go too well for us anymore. We end up throwing pie at one another before the elections are done. There's the ceremonial elders. Those are the guys anywhere from 45 up to 60s and 60 and 70. I'm what you call a ceremonial elder. That's a community elder. Now I'm a ceremonial elder. Those are the ones who teach, who do naming ceremonies, who do parental teachings, who do burials, funerals, and name-giving ceremonies, weddings, and stuff like that. An earth elder is the oldest and the last of our elder groups. These people are old people. They're in this 75 and beyond, 70 and above, right up to 80s and 90s. They don't travel. We stay one place. They stay one place. We don't want them to travel too far because they're infirmed and they're old. We go to them. We go to their place. That's what you call an earth elder. An earth elder stays one place as much as possible, and that's what. And they are healers. They are experts. They are our PhDs, our masters. These are the ones who are the most learned of the elders. So we take very, very good care of these people. We don't try to disturb them too much unless it's absolutely necessary. In a nutshell, this is about it. Thank you very much.
Oh, my name is Thelma Muskwa. I'm a Anishinaabe Cree originally from Manitoba and married into the Kiskus First Nations. I speak my language fluent, which is Ojibwe Saulteaux. That's who I am.
In Cree, Opiginawasun is the word used to describe the child-rearing relationship. In the Ojibwe Saulteaux culture, what words do you use to talk about raising children?
Minyoon Bigao Swing. Minyoon Bigao Swing means good child rearing, how you raise your child. And it takes in a lot of area of the child's life.
Thelma, What are the most important teachings that guide a child through the various stages of childhood? Are there special ceremonies that a family holds to celebrate these stages of childhood?
In the Saulteaux Ojibwe teachings, we have a belief system that goes right from before the child is born until the child grows old and becomes an elder. So it takes in the whole life span of a human being. And the old people used to tell us, so many away in your life. You will light a fire 7 times. That's how they described it. And today it's interpreted as 7 stages of life, or the 7 fires of life. And it takes in, like I said, the whole span of a child's life, into the adult, into the elderly. And it's got very specific things that they follow, right from the time before a child is born to the time that the child starts walking and talking, to the time that the child becomes to be a young adult, like an adolescent, and until he becomes an adult. And then later on in life, as he grows older, he becomes an elder. So this is where the teachings all fall into each stage of this life. And there's so much to it, and we've always believed that we've always celebrated, and we've always had ceremony for everything that the child does. And I believe it helped to help the child grow. It enhanced his ability to know who he was or who she was. It helped that child. And there was many things that went into the teachings at each stage. I remember the old people telling us about children, talking to children, how you never stop talking to children. You just, all the time, even if you have to repeat something over and over. He said, "Kani kai kaponit, ikapone kagigitosi." You'll never stop talking, especially when a child is small, because they're just learning. And that's how they'll learn, because they hear it over and over. Eventually, it's just right in there. And that was one of the teachings that they always taught us. And another thing that always was very strong in my in the way I raised my children, or the way I see families today, is the old people used to say the first 5 or 6 years of the child's life is the most important time in this little child's life. Why? Because that's when they're going to learn. Because they're hearing for the first time, they're seeing for the first time, and they feel and they smell, and they're very curious. So at that time, you want the best for your child all the time. So you teach that child the good things, you tell them the stories. And that's where the storytelling comes in, I believe, where children learn through storytelling, and they learn about nature, because everything is connected. The life is the life of a human being within our teachings and our culture is very holistic. Everything is all together. You know, we're interconnected with nature and with everything around us. And there's so many teachings that go into all this connection, and it all goes back to the maturation, the life that you are living. So there's many things. But the most important thing was teaching this child, you know, when he first talked, when he first walked, the don'ts and the do's, and you know, and it's very important. And I see that today in a lot of our children. I see a lot of our children that don't have that kind, that weren't raised with those values, and I see how lost they are, and how hard it is to try and teach them and tell them, as compared to somebody that's already knows it, because they'll express it in the way they behave, in the way they talk. You'll see it in them. I guess the behavior just naturally comes out that way, and the belief and the attitude they have. It all comes back, it all goes back to the early teachings of development. That's why it's so important as a child that the parent is there, that the parent is responsible, big responsibility to being a parent as well as a grandparent. Yeah, what the parent doesn't teach the child, the grandparent comes in and reinforces the teachings, you know.
What are the most important teachings to guide the transition from child to adult? What marks this transition from girl to young woman?
As the child grows older, about around the age of 8 and 9, then already this is the important time that the transition takes place, and you start preparing the child to be responsible, like to take on responsibilities of adults. This is where there's a lot of mentoring. You know, they work with older children or older siblings or the grandparents, and everything is because they're moving from one age into an older age. And it's important here, I think, to teach the child that this is a new time, a new era in his life, and that also putting more responsibility on this child or this young adult. And that's about the time. It'll go from there till they become a teenager. Eventually you start giving them the roles of being young women and young men. Like in Saulteaux we say, Ushkinigikwe, for you're going to be Ushkinigikwe means you're going to be a young woman. Ushkinigi means you're going to be a young man, you know. This is how you start talking to them and making them feel that, you know, they're not little children anymore, that they are going to be adults, and they have to learn about things that are the adult people to prepare them to be adults, young men, young women.
Are there ways a family and community celebrates the time when a young girl becomes a woman?
Yes, there's always all kinds of, like I said before, there's a ceremony and there's a celebration at everything that the child goes through. Like when the child is born, they're given this spiritual name, this name that they carry through their lives, which gives them a lot of guidance and protection. And they get that early in life. And if they don't, then They can get it any time through their life, through their lifetime. But it's important for them to have that. And they're always referred to by this name, you know. And this is one example of celebration. Even when a child used to get up and start walking, his first walk, there'd be a ceremony, there'd be a celebration. When a young boy went out and started hunting and trapping with his dad or his brother, his first kill, there'd be a celebration. His first time he goes out and kills maybe a rabbit or a duck or whatever, there's always a celebration. And the same thing with the girls, the women. Whatever they do, they're acknowledged, and they celebrate everything. And when a young girl becomes a woman, there's a special ceremony for that. The young girl becomes a woman. She leaves. They used to leave the camp and go off and spend about 4 days away from everybody. A grandmother would take the girl and go and spend time with the girl to teach her about becoming this person she is, this woman she's going to be, and the responsibility she would have as a woman. You know, the woman she's going to become, that she would be a mother, and to prepare her that she would someday be a wife, and to teach her, you know, the skills and the things that she needed to know that would help her become the woman that she was to be. So there was a big celebration about that.
If you had the opportunity to teach parents in raising their girls to young women, what advice would you give them?
You teach them, you know, about to be respectful, to be honest, especially a woman, to be caring, to share and to love, to be a good caregiver, is to be a mother, because you are the one that brings life into this world, and you are responsible for this life, you know, right from the time before the child is born, till the child leaves your home and becomes an adult and goes off to live on his own. Even after that, mothers are still there, you know, they're still there looking after or teaching their grandchildren and their children.
Thelma, when do you teach a young woman about being a mother, and what do you teach them?
As soon as the girl is old enough to understand, you know, what's right and wrong. They could be 7 years old, they could be younger than that. You start teaching them, and older they get, the more you give, the more you make them aware of, you know, the things that they will be responsible for, the responsibilities that they'll have as women. Like in today's world, there's so much influence, and there's so much interference in the way we live, that you sometimes have to remind people, you know, you gotta take time to sit down and talk about those things that we just rush through. I think for a young girl, you start teaching them at a young age, and by the time they become young adults, you know, they're gonna know it by heart. The more you teach them, the younger you teach them, the more you teach them, the better it's going to be for them when they become adults. Yeah.
Who in the family and community is responsible for teaching girls and young women about their sexual nature and maturing into young adulthood?
In our tradition, in our culture, it was always the mothers and the grandmothers, especially the grandmothers. I don't know why, but the grandmothers have always had a lot of influence, and I believe that the young people look at the grandparents with a lot more respect. I don't know if that's right, but from my own experience, that's how I find it. If I say something, my grandchildren will just sit there and listen. And that I sometimes see my daughter talking to her children, and they'll answer her, like, not in a bad way, but they'll respond just like that. And when we were children, and our our grandparents or our parents spoke to us, it was always just, you never spoke, you just sat there. That was one of the greatest forms of respect. You know, you never said anything unless you were asked a direct question. So, but today it's different. But yes, it is the mothers and it is the grandparents, the grandmothers that take on that role of explaining to these young girls or young people about sexuality. And of course, the aunts also play a part in it too, because there's some families that don't have grandparents or that don't have parents. So, you know, with a tight-knit family or community, there's always family around. So aunts come into the picture as well. They step in and they take responsibility. I know we do it in my family. When somebody's missing, somebody else comes in. There's always somebody there ready to fill that. There's never a time where we don't have nobody, you know, when we need somebody. Yeah. And families are getting to be very, very, very educated, I guess. You'll find the right people.
What should young women know about becoming a mother?
One of the most important things that we need to teach our young girls when they become mothers is that they are the givers of life, and that it all goes back to the respect and the care that they take within themselves, the pride that they should have within themselves, and to be humbled, and because they are the life givers. They give life, and that their body is like a temple, that it should be. It is pure, and the life that they give is given to them through the creation. That the spirits of these little children come within their bodies, and they bring them into this life, into this world, and they'll do it over and over. It's you that has to bring into the world, and to make sure that this little life is going to be well taken care of, and many things that will come will be your responsibility. I have such a big love in my family. I've taught my children to love one another, to take care of each other, and I see it myself every day. How they look after one another, how they love me. So that's all part of life. And if we can teach that to our children, especially our girls, that they are very important, and that they need to take care of themselves, because they are the caregivers of this life.
My name is Francis McAdam, but I'm from Big River, and really my name is Shishiwiham, from my grandfather, the first chief. The place really I grew up from my grandfather was Shishiwiham Reserve, and now I live in Big River. I grew up from with a dog sleigh, and I never went to school to start with, and we stayed there maybe about 10, 13-year-old. We moved down to Big River, and I started going to school there, day school on reserve school. So even one of my grandfathers was blind. He was blind, he can't see nothing. But he used to talk about the future. And I used to wonder, looking at that old man, he's blind, and yet he talk about the future. And when they say something for the future, this is what I see. This is what he used to see. How can he see he's blind? When I was growing up with my grandparents, they used to take me to the bush, way out in the bush, where a place there's no sound or anything, just the wild animals and stuff like that. They leave me there for 4 days and 4 nights without food, water, nothing. They call it fasting. There you see things that you never see in your life. You learn things that you never knew before. You hear things that you never heard before. When you're fasting like that, you're not alone. You're surrounded with all kinds of spirits with you. You could even see them. You could even talk to them. That's how it happened to me. Cree people said it's 7 different laws, and those 7 different places that I tie them up, and these are laws that they have to follow up. That's Creator's laws. Just like a TP, everything that's written there, and it's the same thing with your body. All the laws that were gifted, it's in you, in each one of us, that we carried everything, every day of our life.
Manatsu, and is that one of the laws?
Yes, that's respecting. That's one of them. You know, there's a relative of mine. He used to trap up north. This is a true story. I see that man myself. He went up trap line, and halfway down, they freeze to death. And it's hard to believe it. That man is dead along the highway, along the road, not a highway, along the road, this trap line. And a guy came around there, and he seen that man freeze to death. And they called the ambulance, and the police came around. Well, of course, he's freeze to death, just put him there, and he's gone. They take him to the hospital, and they put him downstairs in the hospital there where the bodies are. 4 days, 4 nights, they came back. They came back to the stairs, and they opened the door, and they was knocking the door. The nurse opened the door. There's that man standing there. They got scared right away, but they have to help him. So they put him to bed in a bedroom there in the hospital. I was being sent back. The reason why they sent me back is because people are not following the Creator's laws anymore. And this is the things sometimes I talk about, huh? What you just asked me, that's one of them. And you have to respect those little children. Their parents passed away. And you have to respect those children and love those children. And never recommend yourself be higher than anybody else. And don't be greedy. These 4 things, you pass it on to these people. That's those laws are connected over there with the creators. You don't find very many of these people that carry those laws. If you hold that peace pipe in your hands, those 7 laws, it's in there, you have to carry those laws. They're connected with those laws in there. That's why many years ago, elders, they used those, the sun and the water and the grass grow, and the pipe, they hold it. They're all connected with the laws in there, from the Creator's law.
Growing from a little boy to a young man is discovering that your body changes and you begin to think differently about girls. What are the teachings that help young men have a healthy view of themselves?
I had a teacher that was my grandfather and my grandmother. They teach me as I growing up. I respect many things, even animals. My grandfather used to say when I was growing up, a little boy, not very big, you know, they took me to a bird nest. I was surprised to see that nest, and it looks nice, and it's so nice to play with it. What my grandfather said, he told me, you see that nest, he says, that's your home. The place where we live, that's how it looks. You cannot touch that. That's your home. You have to respect that thing. Every little thing my grandfather used to tell me, don't do that. You don't do this. We go out there and start pulling sweetgrass. You don't pull it more than what you need. Enough for the winter when you want to pray. They give me a short sweetgrass, short one. Here says you pray every day. You burn this thing and pray in the morning, pray in the evening. You burn that thing. You pray. When you've finished all the ways, you let me know how many days you pray. I'll know when it's burned out. For respecting everything, you watch how you talk to a person. You have to respect that person. If you talk to him the wrong way, maybe you're going to make him mad. You're going to get hurt. Many things like that you used to tell me. You know, even animals you have to respect. Horses, everything, even a dog. You have to respect that dog. He's got a job to do it. He's got a law. They have to follow that one too. It's the same thing with that bird nest. You could see it's a round thing, he says. That round thing, that's his life. The world is round. That's where we live. Everything what the needy person do is a round thing. You have to follow that all the time, he says, in circles. The moon, the star, and the sun. Everything you look around, you'll see. That's respect. It reminds you everything is to do that. If you're living within the future, you're going to see a lot of things. You're going to become a man someday. You're going to have a wife someday. You're going to have children in the future. Just like that bird nest. You have to respect that woman that you're going to live with. In return, they'll give you respect. Because you're willing to live together and you're willing to carry the problems and the good things for your future. That's why you're going to grow up with your children with that sweetgrass. And that sweetgrass, I'll pray for you if you pray. They'll correct your prayers for you. All those spirits all over, they'll help you if you follow the Creator's law. You know, all the things that they have told me to do, I don't see that I follow it. Maybe I made a mistake too sometimes. Maybe I didn't do it right. But I do the best I can, as much as I can. Today now, I thank to the Creator, I don't have no problem with my kids. They all work, and they all don't drink. And my daughter become a lawyer, and the others, they work at the penitentiary. And they work in a store. They work at the mines. I got a lot of kids. So maybe I did something good, what my grandparents have told me.
My name is Juliet McAdam, and I'm from Big River Reserve, Saskatchewan.
Opiginawasun. What is meant by this concept of childbirth and child rearing? How does it direct a parent-child relationship? And how is it understood in your Cree culture?
Opiginawasun, ni tauginawasun. That's childbirth and child rearing. And it is so important during that time that we keep our children in our wombs during that 9 months. Because the number 9 in our tradition is very, very spiritual. The 9 months that we carry our children, very spiritual. It originated to the clan mothers. There are 13 of them, 13 clan mothers, but the 9 should be working here on earth. That's why the woman was given 9 months to bear the children in their body. And it's very important that I teach my children, my grandchildren, and my great-grandchildren these, because the clan mothers, they are the ones that sit with the law. So of course I have to teach them. That's part of child rearing. And it's very important that they know the laws, the men's law, the woman's law too, and how to respect themselves during that time. I myself had 8 children, and one of them was born in a house. The midwife was my grandmother. She came wearing a bonnet. My grandmother called it a bonnet. And later on she told me, she said, your child is going to be very smart in the future. She is going to have that intellectual knowledge of the ancestors. That's why she came being born with a bonnet which covered her eyes. And they have to take it off, and they later put it in a clean place, my 2 grandmothers. My grandmother's name was Kiskaopiusk, the sitting woman in Cree, and the other grandmother was Jean Lachance. There was 2 grandmothers that delivered. my daughter. So therefore I felt blessed to have these grandmothers at that time. Today now I don't have any grandmothers, but I'm a grandmother myself and also a great-grandmother. So I learned a lot from my mother and my grandmother. Child rearing, and I myself never drink alcohol in my lifetime. I took care of my children. They listened to me. Of course, listening is one of the number one teaching, and how to respect your mother, how to respect other people. And that's what I've been teaching my children and my grandchildren. And now my great-grandchildren are here, so of course I'm gonna be doing that.
If the main point in child rearing is to make sure children experience a healthy, balanced life, including the physical, the mental, emotional, and spiritual elements, what do we expect from parents in the process of child rearing?
Child rearing is a very important step. There are 4 stages to it. The beginning is the first cry of the baby. That's why when the midwives, like my grandmother, she understood the message that the child brings, the very first cry they make. And the first stages in cutting the umbilical cord is very important. And after the umbilical cord is off the baby's body, we of course take care of that. And we put it, with the girls, we put it in an ant pile, so they'll be good workers, they'll be moving around all the time. They won't be idle. That's one of the things that my grandmothers had told me. For the boys, it's in the bush, so they could be good hunters, good providers. That's the first stage in their life. And when they become like 4 years old, and that's when the important things can be happening for them. They could be given a spiritual name. From the very first stage, when they're 1 year old, they do the walking out ceremony, they call it. When the child first touches the earth, they had a ceremony there too. But that's not done anymore. But of course my parents did it with us, with all of us, my siblings. There were 6 girls and 2 boys in my family. I'm the youngest one in the family. And I didn't do that with my children. Like my grandparents were gone by the time I started with my children. And they were the ones that used to do the ceremony, walking out ceremony. In that time of 1 year of that child's life, they didn't touch the earth. They were inside all the time. But when they're ready to go out, when they start walking around, that's when they did the walking out ceremony, which was held in a teepee or else in a lodge, and they did a ceremony for that child, giving it blessings and lots of a good path.
What marks a time when a girl becomes a young woman? Are there ways that a family and community celebrate this time? And what are the Cree laws that a young woman needs to learn?
The very first moon time for the girls, they were taken out in the bush. They weren't allowed even to have eye contact with anybody. That's why as Native people, we don't have eye contact too much. We look at somebody, then we look away. And I used to ask my grandmother, why can't I have eye contact with anybody? And she told me, you will know later on, you will be tampering with that person's third eye. And at that time I did not understand. But now I understood that. So with my brother, I have only one brother. I was never allowed to talk to him. That's how much respect we were taught. I was never allowed to walk in front of men. I was never allowed to talk to my uncles. If I was to talk to my uncle, I have to turn the other way. I have to show my respect for that uncle. To this day, like, our parents are gone. All our siblings are gone. It's just me and my brother now. I still have a hard time to talk to him. That was my respect for him. So respect was very important in our teachings. One of the things that I was shown when I came out with my grandmother from our lodge in the bush, they had a blanket, and on each side of the blanket were gifts. And the very first one was a watch, and the second one on this side was a radio, a transistor radio. And my dad was the very first one to speak to me. And he was the one that said, in the future, as you grow older, you always have to remember that time is very important. You wake up with the sun. You sing a song with the sun. And always remember, the Creator is always looking after you. Because time does not wait for anybody. That's what my dad told me. And then when it was my mother's turn, she said to me, you have to listen. That's a device there. But that's how they're going to teach you as you go along, as you grow older. And I was not allowed to ask any questions while they were explaining all these gifts to me. My sisters, my aunties, their gifts were right there. And every one of them had to explain how to be punctual, how to be not greedy, not to be selfish, not to talk about people, and how to be clean. Cleanliness was very important. And at the end was my grandmother's pot. And she said to me, as you grow older, my grandchild, she said, never have an empty pot in your house. Always give. It's better to give than to receive, she told me. Even if it's the last thing you have in your house, if somebody asks for it, give. That's what she told me. And I have based my life on that. Yeah, my grandmother's pot was the last one. And she told me, like I said, she told me my pot should never be empty. When I start to have my own house, my own family, and as I grow older, especially when you grow older, she told me, you're going to be having lots of visitors from around the world. And sure enough, I had received a lot of people from around the world. New Zealand, Australia, the Aborigines in Tibet and England, everywhere from around the world. And I've received people across Canada in my house. So my house is never empty too much. Now that my children are all grown up, I don't have a hard time with my children, which I'm very proud to say. They're all working. And now my grandchildren, they graduated from high school and stuff like that, because I had said to them, I did not want them to grow up without an education, because that's what my grandmother and my parents had said to us too. In the future, education is going to be very important. When I started having my own children when I was 20 years old, in between that time, I did not have much education. I went up to grade 8. But after that, when my children were grown up, both of us started working, and we worked 13 years in the penitentiary in Edmonton. And the way I teach my granddaughters, I explain to them what my grandmother had explained to me, to respect themselves. Today now, I'm very, very happy that I listened to her. And that's what I told my grandchildren, my granddaughters. To respect themselves, to respect their bodies. And I said to them, in a woman, I said, when they receive the child, there is only one way in and one way out. And later on, I will explain these to you in a traditional way. Today now, young people are very sensitive, and I did not want to hurt them in that way. So I sat with them and I explained it to them, what my grandmother had told me, but not in the harshest way, but in a kinder way. Because a long time ago, that elders' teachings were very, very harsh. We're going to tell you only once, and you're going to have to understand it. So today now, you have to repeat and repeat before they can understand these young people. Because most of the time, like, they're texting and they're not really listening, you know. So I always sit down with my granddaughters, my grandsons, how to respect a woman, even the men. I said to my boys when they were starting to grow up, I said, my grandmother used to tell me not to push the woman around, even to slap the woman. When you slap the woman, it's just like you're slapping your mother. And if you push the woman around, it's just like pushing your mother around. To this day, I'm very proud to say that my sons are really respectful to their wives. I'm really proud to say that. Because, and I also told them, you don't skip from one woman to the other, you stick with one woman. And that's what's happening today. I'm really, really happy about that. So those teachings were passed on to me by my grandmother, and I'm always teaching, talking to them, my grandsons and my granddaughters, about these things.
When should a young woman become a mother? What would you teach a young Cree woman about being a mother?
When I used to talk to them, I preferred that they finish their education. For myself, I felt I was a role model to my children. Because today now, my children don't use alcohol. They're alcohol free, and I'm really happy about that. They're good workers, and because the way of life, the old way, is not there anymore. So now we're trying to bring them up in an educational way. For us in our reserve there, we try to teach the children in the schools how to make traditional things, like basket making, beadwork, how to make a moose hide the Indian way. And all those traditional things, we try not to lose them. I was told never, never to lie. And that was one thing too, that was one teaching, that we were told never to lie to people. Because it's one of the sins that we commit. We cannot lie to the Creator when it's our time to go. We have to confess what is bothering us in our hearts. That's why I always say to my grandchildren and my children, lying is no good. It will catch up to you. It will come back to you. It will return. And when it returns, it'll be like 4 times harder. That's what we were told. So.
I come from a place called Dene, Saskatchewan, and they call it Buffalo River Dene Nation. And in Dene they would be saying Ejiriche, what's in Dene Hisli. That meaning that's where I come from. Yeah, my mother is actually from Dene, and my mother has taught a lot in Dene for numbers of years, and I've lost my dad back in 1988. Yeah, and he's the guy that taught me a lot when we were together. Yeah.
When you talk about raising children in your culture, what words do you use in the Dene language?
Raising a children would be like, in our language we'll say sequinelier.
And what does that mean when you say that?
When they grow up, since the time they're born, and as they grow up, that's what we mean, sequinelier. And I got a daughter back home, she's a 20-year-old. She's got a little girl. She'll be going on 2 years old. My daughter's never done any drinking, and she never did any drugs. So I'm very proud of her, my daughter, for what she does, and she still goes to school. Well, we're keeping a little young one,
Yeah, you were also telling me that you raise some, you have some foster children that you're raising.
Yeah, we actually had three foster kids, and one of them, the youngest, his dad took him back here in the city, in Saskatchewan. And we also have a adopted little girl that my daughter, when she was 8 to 9 months old, with this little girl, and my daughter wanted to adopt her, so she asked me, and then I said, if it's okay with your mom, you can go ahead and adopt her. I try to teach them the best way that I can. Like, I don't allow people to drink in my house or to do drugs, and even smoking. If we do smoke, we have to go outside. And a little teaching that I teach them is from what I learned from my grandparents and from my parents as I grew up. I've also went to the residential school, which took me away from my parents. And that was kind of hard too, but It's what I know now is I learned from my elders, from my friends.
You know, when we raise children, we try to raise them so they're happy and they know who they are. Now, in your culture, James, what does it mean to be balanced, to be a person who is well-adjusted?
You know, when, like they say, se quiniliede, bekwa dokene ye, horeliana de, eti begoro no, kontu troslina zon de si bedine, se quiniliede, se qui, ja, dan kan het ga, da honte, en toen il gare, honte de honte yande se qui, you know, gare hadunel thanale, nuni di honil thano. So as the kids, when they grow up in a home, you know, they should be like, you know, they feel safe when they know this. We don't allow people to drink in your house. No, we don't do any drugs with them. You know, as they grow up, they see that. So eventually, you know, we're a role model to them.
When you talk about the young people knowing who they are, what does that mean in the Dene culture? How do you help young people know what it means to be Dene?
Well, when a young kid, when they're small, we tell them that they're Dene. So we talk to them in Dene, teach them our language. We have to teach our children that they are Dene people. We are Dene Suntline. You know, I myself, when I had my daughter, you know, I talk to her in Dene Abalyasti. And when she was a little girl, that's all she spoke was Dene until she got a little, you know, and she got to about grade 3 or grade 4, and then she started speaking in English. But until today, she just kept her, you know, her language, like in the Dene. And if she doesn't talk right in Dene, then I'll correct her. And this is how you're supposed to say it. Don't worry, niho ase. This is how you're supposed to say it. So until today, I still teach my kids that they have to be, you know, speaking in Dene.
So James, you told me you're a grandfather now. Part of being a grandfather is teaching your granddaughter your language. Are there other things you teach her besides the Dene language?
I teach them like how to dress up, you know. And at going on 20 years old now, she dresses up herself. No, she doesn't need any help. You know, I said, I can do it. Si thanas loaze. You know, she'll say that in her language. And I'm very proud to see that from a little girl.
You were telling us about how you taught your daughter, and now your granddaughter, how to speak Dene. What difference does that make in your daughter's life, being able to speak Dene in your community?
You know, Celine Danayati, you know, Sisaba Nezondo, Yoruba Yaze Honat Khana Hondo ya, Dana de Yaltiastan, Kolesinli and the Celine ya Beyaze out here Dana Honat Khano. But as a cause, Dani Lied only, Danaya Yalti Horisi. And Hondo Dani and the, you know, Sequi Beati Huntono honor. So I always told my daughter that, you know, when I speak to her in Dene, to tell her, you know, when you talk to your little daughter, you know, you have to, you know, talk to her in your language, talk to her in Dene, then she'll understand as you talk to her, you know, and also those other kids that we keep, like those foster kids. You know, talk to them in Dene. You know, now those kids, as we talk to them in Dene, they understand what we're talking about. but they're slowly starting to pick up now to speak. They can understand what you're talking about, but you know, they're slowly starting to speak their language now. And it's nice to hear that. Sometimes they laugh about it, but you know, we correct them. We sit down and then we say, this is how you're supposed to say that word. This is how you're supposed to say that sentence, you know? Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that your daughter seems to be a strong person. How is that connected with what you've taught her about her language?
You know, my daughter, you know, she speaks her language. I know that's one of the reasons why she's strong out there. You know, when she's among, you know, with her friends out there, you know, when she speaks, she also talks to those young, to her friends out there that they have to speak their language, you know. This is why I know that she's strong, because she knows what people are talking about when she hears people out there that's older than her, and then when these people are speaking in Dene, she can understand what they're talking about, and this is what keeps her strong, you know. And she even teaches other kids, you know, that when they talk together, that they correct themselves and then they say, "This is how you're supposed to say that," you know. And I think this is one of the reasons why that she's strong today. That, like I said before, that you know, she doesn't drink or do drugs, or you know, she's a role model to the young ones, and I'm very proud of her.
James, you were telling me about the young parents. What do you tell them? What kind of advice do you give them about raising their children?
Bana being at the Idale, a day no kinesequita, no kindani ye. A seed and Tirosi seek an idea, no coin. Bana being at the day, no cadana tragara, a yasequi, count egaladani than a yerosin, Dani in that relzada and the Daning yonder. Colonuni baba at the Hiddalaza, contu closlinazo, see. Our lily cannot a day a bed in there. No scanners, no kindani ye, no cadana tra. I didn't go to Dani Yoha, a sound day. Baba Tuluati Hills in there. So, no, as a parent, you know, we have to be the role model to them.
What are some of the things that you teach young boys and young men that will help them to have respect for themselves? And then what are some of the things they need to know as a Dene person from the Buffalo River Dene Nation that would make them respect themselves?
It is on the sound as a. So when as a kid is growing up, you know, they have to have respect for themselves and take care of themselves as they grow up. No. Like I said, they have to stay away from all this negative stuff. You know, they shouldn't even be bothering this, because what they need to nowadays is these young people is education. They have to have education. Se quinti di school other they had on el tchaneza. Si non si gana dilu. But they read in school not do it no it idani yande. It is on the another in the ba. It is on a sound there.
James, you were telling me that you do some hunting and trapping as taught to you by older members of your family. Do you pass those teachings and skills on to the young people in your community?
Si, then go there, Nage, Nalzek and Astres, Nahi Hodonestran, and Salolini than see. When I go hunting, I teach them young boys when I go maybe boarding fishing, hunting, duck hunting, rabbit snaring. I teach them because they need to learn to do this to provide food for their family. And this is what I do today. I go hunting, I provide food for my family for the winter. I went hunting in the fall time. So when I go hunting, I do take some young boys with me sometimes, And I know that back home there's a lot of young boys that like to go hunting.
Do the Dene people have ceremonies that mark when a young boy becomes a young man?
Back home we've lost this, ceremonies, said Dene. But now, within the last 20, 25 years now, we're starting to do a little bit of ceremonies now and then. Like sweat lodges, ceremonies. We try to do this as much as we can now, and when there's special events coming up and stuff like that, But we lost this for quite a while. Even drumming, we lost that. But like I said, within the last 20 plus years that we've picked up, and we have our Dene drummers back home, and now we're teaching that to our young ones in school.
What are some of the things you teach the young men about drumming?
Once you're holding a drum, it's like, we gotta have respect for this drum. And we teach that to the young ones, that once you're holding a drum and playing this drum, or even holding a feather, these things that when you're holding a drum and a feather, and you shouldn't be doing drugs, you shouldn't be drinking, because these are very sacred. Our grandfathers, our grandmothers have held this long time ago, and that we got to hold this with respect. The way we leave our drums, on the floor, on the ground, sometimes they just kind of toss it over there, or leaving the drum upside down, all these little things. Don't walk over it or step over it, Put it in a place where it's safe, like where people don't walk over it. We teach all these little. Say kui drama honal khande, they see, yeah, shana dai jande el ghalihal, the father hunt khonu, what the red line elti, kontu los lina zedine, de sunt ile se kuno de si gana de. Hundu hodon el khane hundu dani yede nizun losa nastan sida. So what I just said is about the drummers. What I've told you, yeah. Before we take our drum or start singing, we usually smudge ourselves with a sweet grass. Smudge ourselves, and then we go. Sometimes we take our tobacco and then we offer. Pray at the same time. Then we make an offering, and then we can start playing our drums. And these are the things that we learn. That this drum is very sacred. It's not a toy. We use it, for the dance. When we sing, we use it inside a sweat lodge. Like I said before, we always smudge it before we use it.
James, who teaches the young men about their sexuality, about being men, and what that means in their families and in their community?
Dene go there, dene yude, dene yaze, balyat hiho, se kui bazin dan lo, do se kui gasorit liu, dene use only there. See, na do city kui has an altangare, see the do the yani. As a young man, to have respect for the woman, I myself here, I have a young boy that, I have to teach him, about a woman, to have respect for this woman. As the things that he shouldn't be doing, and the things that he should be doing. So this is, I think, as a parent, I should be the one that's teaching this young boy. Talk to him and make him understand that these things that as a woman is, you have to have respect for this woman. Then I go there, they like. Then I go there, they think about it, it's a quick as it liha. A man's got, this young boy's got to have a lot of respect towards a girl. The way you touch a woman. There's certain places to touch a woman. Even to say hello or give her a tap. You got to watch where you touch a woman. These are little things that I myself learned, and this is what I got to pass on to this young one.
If the young people are abusing alcohol and drugs, how do they learn that it's not healthy for them and their families? Do they learn from the consequences, or do the people actually try to help them?
They see that these young men, these young people now, they see that the alcohol is no good for them. But once you start, you're drinking your drugs, it's very, very hard for them to let go. Because there are two things that it's in there, your alcohol, your drugs. And to let go both of them, it's very, very hard. And sometimes they go through a rough time for them to learn. It'd be an accident, causing death, And this is maybe a good young man or a good young girl. One bad mistake. Sometimes it's too late. But before it's too late, they should try to do something about their drinking. We're not here by ourselves. You need somebody. There's a higher power out there that can help you. You need to pray. Talk to this higher power. One day I had that problem, drinking and drugs. It's very hard for me as a young man to let go. I let go the alcohol. I would be smoking up drugs. It's going on 20 years now since I stopped drinking, stopped the drugs. I had to let go. Me and my brother, we planned to go for help. The day that we were supposed to go for help was the day that I buried him. Because of house fire, because of him drinking. House caught on fire, he died in a house fire. It was very hard when I used to drink and I didn't feel good about myself because I was sick. And then I see this man walking. I should be that way. I used to think like that. So today, I've been sober for 20 years. I see these young men, they look at me. And then back home, I see people, young boys come up to me. They ask me to talk to them. And I talk to them, So I know there is a lot of problem up north for these young people. There is help out there, If you need help, go out there and get help. Now, if you have a drinking problem or thinking about suicide, talk to somebody. If you keep that to yourself, eventually, I see that a lot of times, and these young people are committing suicide. It seems like there's no place for them to go, but there is places to go. You have to talk to an elder. How you're feeling, what you're going through. Don't be scared to go out there and get help and work on yourself. This is the message I like to pass on to these young people,
Jesse Sylvester Hushe, Jerish Choti Dene Hisli. My name is Jesse Sylvester. I come from the Buffalo River Dene Nation.
Upiginawasun. What is meant by this concept of childbirth and child rearing, and how is it understood in the Dene culture? How does it direct the parent-child relationship?
In our Dene culture, child rearing is considered sacred. Sequine yehis nonla Dene suntlina yatia. Sequinung ini yada dana Tarlio Dana Yekedasetli. When a child is born, there's a lot of happiness within a family unit. A child being born is considered very sacred, therefore it was not something to be not something to be played around with. And the teachings that are brought to this young child and the gifts that he or she is born with are something that our people will care for and nurture and strengthen so that the child will develop in a holistic manner, that there's balance in the child's life. And the elders were there to help, to guide, to nurture, and for the child to walk a safe path. And those were the teachings, and these are teachings that our people have always had. And some of the teachings today haven't changed, but there's a lot that we've lost in many of our teachings with the child rearing today.
How are Dene girls and young women taught to lead a life of well-being? Are they taught to follow the Dene laws? What are those Dene laws to move a young girl into womanhood?
Sakui nunk ini yara, sakui nunk ini yara. Ay sakui shu Dene yuchu edunegizi hadonaltchen. The teachings of a female are very different teachings from a young man in the Dene teachings. And so a lot of women were always involved with the young women right from the time the child was born. The moon time and those teachings were passed on by the elders. So the transition was not traumatic for a young woman. They knew what to expect when their moon cycle first comes onto them. And so traditionally there may have been a ceremony. Today we've lost a lot of our ceremonies in the Dene Suntline ways, which is really sad. However, having said that, the teachings are coming back, and it's going to come back stronger. But a lot of our young people, it seems, have gone astray. And so with the help of other First Nations, not only the Dene people, because our teachings are pretty well the same, that we need to help one another in bringing our youth back into what we call the sacred journey, I guess, the safe journey. And historically, again, my people, those are the things that they said that it's all right, we need to help one another. And in that sense, with keeping that concept in mind, I think we need to help our young women lead that safe path again. A young woman's body, the teachings was that never to disrespect their body and to keep it safe, to protect it, to protect themselves.
If the main point in child rearing is to make sure children experience a healthy, balanced life, including the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual elements, what do we expect from parents in the process of child rearing?
Dene qua sa quine yehi, dene chel sa ho enlede Saulteaux nonila. One of the teachings from our elders that the home has to be a safe place where everything is nurtured in a holistic manner. And if one is out of balance within a home, our children are lost. And then elders need to address that, should be addressed to the family unit, that because our children are sacred and that every step should be a safe step that the child takes. And so having said that, we see a lot of changes in today's rearing of children, and the breakdown of family units is truly traumatic on the child. And when we see our young girls today lost and seeking love, as they put it, in the wrong sense, then I think that's where we, as people who care for them and who should nurture them, need to come in and help our young women get back into our traditional way of thinking. There's a lot of confusion, I guess, and the elders have said that the teachings need to come back, and that is the only way that we can become a strong nation again in terms of who we are as Dene people, and to give the proper respect back to our young women.
So, Jessie, could you tell me, when should a young woman become a mother? What would you teach a young woman about being a mother?
The elders need to come in and educate our young people so these things don't happen. We see so many of our young children, our young mothers, having children at a very young age and don't know how to rear their children today. And as a result of that, as an educator myself, we have many children today who come to school in a saddened way. Cognitively, a lot of our children are lost because of what was put into the young woman's body while the baby was growing. When young women become pregnant, and again, I'll speak from what I see from my area, a lot of our young women don't look after themselves even while they're on their pregnancy. And we see a lot of drugs, we see a lot of alcohol and other chemicals that they're putting into their bodies. And as a result of that, the child growing, the sacred child growing inside of them, is taking in all these toxins, and the child 9 months later, or sometimes prematurely, are born, and our people say that if the child could help itself it wouldn't take any of the drugs, it wouldn't take any of the alcohol. But because the child is helpless, it takes in everything that the mother ingests. And so the elders are saying that if the child had been on its own, it would come into this world in a holistic manner, with everything just in a calm manner. A lot of our children have to have the help of so many therapists, psychologists. The teachings have to come back, because after all, these were our sacred teachings for our children that we see today in today's society.
As a Dene woman, what advice would you give to a young girl who is moving into womanhood?
Tuhum zakwaza asna de henelere belyastide edeges rutli hadalisi hum hobe helyasti. A nohant ani nutsikui nutsunekui beta edeges dasitliha. We must look after our bodies, nurture our bodies in a holistic way, so that we live a long life, a long, healthy life. And that would be a teaching that would pass on to the young today, to the young women.
Okay, first of all, just I'm grateful and thankful and given this opportunity to share in any way that I can of the Nakota language, Nakota way of life. I was born on September 17th, 1953 on Carrickakell First Nation to Doug and Valma Owatch. I was born on the reserve, and my father always stressed the importance of education, the importance of respecting, the importance of loving, the importance of being nice to people. We try to teach our children to grow up, to get an education, to decide a future for themselves, make sure that they're ready to support a family, and also to teach them the values of a family, the love, the respect, the patience, the understanding that comes along as a parent. And so it's just making sure that we raise our children in a good way, healthy, providing them with whatever we can.
Okay. Joe, when you say raising your children in a good way, what does that involve? What do you expect from your children?
Going back to my childhood of course, my father talked to us, and the old people said that long ago, when the elders went around, when the people went around of the day, they were always Wahogian, and Wahogia means they were always advising each other, always telling them what was right or wrong. And so that also came with teachings of the parents to their children, always telling them what's right or wrong, what's respectful, and teaching them the spirituality of Nakota way, the songs, the pipe, what the pipe means, the sun dances, all these different things that are all taught. And mainly the language, because as I mentioned and as the elders talk about, our language was a form of identity. When you had your language, you had respect, you had all these things that came along with it. You had your religion, your spirituality. And so when we raise our children, we try to raise them in those good ways and tell them that, alcohol and drug is not good for them. Go out and get a job, go out and get your education. We have lots of opportunities now, and take advantage of them, and mainly, the main thing is respecting each other, respecting people, respecting what's around them, and at the same time not forgetting what the Creator has given us, Mother Earth, the universe, all creation, and also to pray. Our elders pray in the morning, pray at dinner time, pray in the evening. When they sit down to eat, they pray, and that's what the elders always tell us, is to pray, pray.
Joe, in the Nakota way, what does it mean to live a balanced life?
The Assiniboine people, or the people talk about before coming down, the Creator showed us all where we were going to be going, our parents, our partners, our children, everything. But he left one thing, and then when we went to this whale, we forgot everything. Not everything, a bit of what we didn't forget was the religion, what he gave us, showed us, and taught us. And so we carried that to this whale. And so to balance our lives, I think, is, you live your normal life, you grow up, walk, talk, run, all these things, go through life, eventually to a grandfather. So you have that life at the same time. You also, to make that life balance, you have your religious side, where that you worship the Creator who's given you all these things. And to me, that's one form of balanced life that I heard of. There's other forms, in terms of balancing, making sure your life is balanced, recreation and eating good food or things like this there.
What are some of those teachings that are important for parents to know so they can give their children the best opportunity to become balanced adults?
Well, I guess that question, I'll go back. My own personal life was my father, during growing up, all of us was advising me that, to grow up to be a respectable person, to respect the law, to stay out of trouble. People won't hire me if I had a criminal record. People will shun me if I just wasn't a downright scoundrel, I guess, or not a person that had no respect for anything or anybody. That was drilled into me. The importance of education, the importance of my two hands here, my legs, God, the Creator, given us to work, and also looking for a wife, a good woman, a good companion that'll provide a good companionship to you, that'll have children and raising a good family, and to get an education, to get a degree, so that you can provide for your family. You can put a good roof over your head. You can put food on the table for your children. You can put clothing on your children's back.
In the Nakota way, when is a young boy considered to be a young man? And how do you celebrate that transition?
No, again, there's through history, you've heard a lot of different stories. But I think a man, when he's 18 years old or more, I know my father always said that he didn't start to do anything till he was 21 years old. He didn't try to smoke, he didn't try to drink or anything because the old people had raised him said that, you wait till you're 21 years old. But because the legal age is 18 now, or 19 for everything, I think that'd probably be the age.
Joe, are there any ceremonies in the tradition of the Nakota that mark the passing of a young boy into a young man?
Mainly the sun dance songs, the rain dance songs, and also to how to take a pipe, accept a pipe, and how to pray with it in your own language. And once you, those teachings can take a long way. The feasts, like how there are certain ways you do things at these different ceremonies, at a feast, funerals, different things. And I think to me, because it's part of our tradition, and as a father, we want our children, our sons, to know and to hold a pipe and to hold these bundles and to walk a good way of life, to walk that red road. And so we want those teachings to pass on to our children so that they can walk. And then also to our women to learn their respectful place, and also as men, as a family, to make sure to have a lot of respect for our mothers, our women, our mothers, grandmothers, our wives, our sisters, and show these teachings. But I think once you've learned those things and understand them and believe in them, then you're probably into the man. But I've heard different stories. There's one story I heard. There was a test that they did in the Assiniboines. There was three tests that you had to pass. One was that you were given a rope and you were given a wild Mustang, and you had to tame that wild Mustang to ride it. Once that feat was done, your next test was that you find a badger and you try to kick it in the ass while it's running the other way. And the other one, and then the third one was that if a fire like that, you take a hot log and then you put it out in your hand. And then if you did pass those three tests, then you would become a man. Now, I don't know how true that is, especially the kicking of the badger in the ass.
You mentioned earlier that the Cree word is oskapio.
Oskapio.
What's the Nakota word for that?
Wazikyab, something like that.
So that's one of the roles you've taken on in your community. Is it important to pass that on to your sons and grandsons?
Yeah, because it was passed on to me by my dad. My dad used to do that, my uncle Johnny, they're both gone, but they used to do that and I used to watch them. And my dad used to take me all over the place with him. Every place he went, he used to take me because all that time I didn't know he was showing me these things here. And so I got to witness and see a lot of things, and I got to watch them get up there, and got to learn the ways, how they do it and everything. And it's a challenging to be a Scorpio, like when you're doing the giveaways or the voice for the people, because when somebody comes to you, come to me, and if you lost someone and you want me to talk, I gotta look at you and I gotta read your mind and try to figure out what you want to say and how you're going to say, because you're mixed with emotions, you're hurting or else you're happy, or so I got to look at you, I got to look at your eye, I got to look, and just by the way you talk, the way you say things, and I got to put those into words for you for the people. And so I've seen my mom, my dad do that. I've seen my uncle Johnny do that. Come up with ways how the people, to capture what the people are trying to say and talk to the people, the rest of the people about that. Yeah, I'd like my children to, my son, I got 2 sons. I would like to see one of them carry that on, because besides me, there's a couple other people that are doing that back at home. But other than that, I'm the one they usually call on and do all the funerals, all the speaking, the giveaways, the feasts, the flower days.
So in that role, you probably have opportunity to talk to a lot of young people who are just starting their families. What kind of advice do you give them when they're asking for guidance?
Well, number one is I always say don't drink, because I think alcohol is the number one problem in our young people. Money. Like the one elder from South Dakota said, there's 3 things the Europeans bought over, he said, was money, alcohol, and bed bugs. Money, we can't handle it. We don't know how to handle it because that's not our currency. Alcohol, look at what it's done to our Indian people. And bed bugs. Said they should have left those over there. So I try to express to them, if you're going to live a happy life, a good life, healthy children, the mother not to drink, and these some of the trainings that I took as a social worker is, making sure the mother abstains from drinking during pregnancy, try to encourage them to breastfeed. Breastfeed is better than formula. And alcohol seems to be the number one problem in every breakup, every situation, and try to stay away from that. Work, there's better things to do. There's a whole, as my father said, there's a whole big world out there. Go and look at it, go and see it. Save your money up, work, save your money up, and go visit those places as opposed to spending your money on alcohol or drugs. So I try to share that with these people. Get an education, go and travel, do things with your family, and give things to your family that you never had. because of your mom and dad drinking or because of circumstances. And so I try to encourage them that, and then mostly is to look after themselves, take care of each other. We never know when we're going to meet horrible things where we lose lives and we feel sorry. We can never say sorry to anybody. So those are some of the teachings that Nakota elders always talk. My grandmother is 95 years old and she's still active. And every time she prays and every time she talks, she always talks about have pity on each other. What will she and she have you? Take care of each other, help each other, be pitiful to each other. We're Indian people, we struggle, and this road is tough we're walking on, and we don't need to make it tougher on each other by being hateful or anything to one another. So be kind to each other, be helpful, help anybody, and it goes for everybody.
What would you be looking for in a young man, you know, to be able to say, yeah, he's ready to be a father?
Going back to the traditional ways, from what we were told, you know, you should have a team of horses. My dad had a team of horses, a little house. Wasn't quite big enough, and he felt he didn't have enough to, when he married my mother, to take her home. So the night of the wedding, he took my mother home, and when my mother got to the door, her dad was standing there, and he asked her, "What are you doing here?" She said, "Well, I'm going to stay here till Doug fixes up a bigger house and gets things ready for us." And he said, "No, you go with him. You married him. He's yours now. You're not. This house isn't yours." So she left. And so I think when we look at today's society, you know, we need to look at what they're doing. You know, it's going out, getting an education, going to university, getting a degree, or finding a good job, saving up money so that you can buy a house, buy a vehicle, you can support a family. It costs lots today now to bring a child into this world. And so I think as Indian people coming into the 20th century, we have to look at those ways of life as opposed to the way we live. That's not to say that don't give up your Indian language, don't give up your spirituality, don't give up the tribe that you come from. Be very proud of who you are, who you represent, and be thankful that the Creator has given you all these things that you have. Sometimes we're not grateful and thankful that we have all these things, and we do. We have lots as Indian people. We may not have money, we may not have materialistic things, but we do have our language. We have a place we can call home. We have our own spirituality that was given directly to us from the Creator. It's not written in books. And so we have lots as Indian people. Lots. We have love. I have love to share here. Every place I go, I was brought up that way. To share love, to be good to each other, to be good to people. Even though you don't know them, I say hi to people. Even though if I don't know them, I try to do that.
Joe, part of becoming a father is making that transition from young boy to young man. Being a man is being comfortable with your identity as a sexual person. So, who do you think should guide the young person so they have a good idea as to who they are sexually?
Well, in my case, I had both my father and my mother talk to me about that. My father talked to me, make sure you don't hit a woman, make sure you treat her with respect, make sure, you know, all these things, mainly respect, love, not to hit. Help her out, she's your companion. Don't walk behind her, walk ahead of her, walk beside her. And then my mother shared her feelings from a woman's perspective as to what they would like a man, how a woman would feel that she should be treated by a man. So I think, to me, when I look at that, it's good, it's important, because you get a man's perspective in terms of what you know, our responsibilities are, our expectation. But at the same time, when coming from a woman, is how to treat them, what they expect. You know, a lot of times you ask Mother's Day, Mom's birthday, what do we buy? Flowers, candies, jewelry, something they put underneath. Have we ever asked, can we do dishes? Can we clean the house? Can we mop the floor? You know, things like that. And so she was able to say those are more important than your flowers, more important than that gold watch, something, you know, that in the house, something that's affected. So I think if you want to have a clear and good understanding of the male and female, is to have that kind of guidance. But my father also told me, make sure that you know that girl well enough to marry her before you marry her, because when you marry her, you make that commitment for a long time, till death do us part. Share, be open to each other, those kind of things.
Do any of the Nakota ceremonies that you've participated in teach young men certain ways of behaving and then certain ways of thinking?
Yeah, like especially when we come to feasts, as a head server, my job is to go and pick out young men amongst in the crowd to serve, and so some of these young kids, I had to talk to them and tell them like how to pass the food, how to handle the food, so I share that with them.
Okay, so when you do that, when you're teaching them, what do you hope they will gain from the experience of serving people?
I hope that they will know what it means, the meaning of it, first of all. I try to explain that to them. And also that they will always carry that, because that's part of us. It's been given to us by the Creator. So this is part of our life as growing up as a Nakota person. You should have that, you should know that, and you should be prepared to pass that on to your children, your grandchildren, and keep it going as long as you can. Never forget it. Because it's not written in the books any place how to do this. I got 3 children, 15 grandchildren, but my grandchildren are all young, but I got a couple of them that are showing interest. I got, in fact, there's one, the oldest one, she's just turned 13. She speaks good Assiniboine. She's taking it in school. And I got a couple of other ones that are like giving me feathers. Every time they find feathers, they know the eagle feathers are important. So whatever feather they find, they'll come and find me and give it to me. So they're picking up on that. And I try to sometimes, like I try to pray every morning, every evening. I sit down with my smudge bowl. And some days I bring them together and smudge. And my son-in-law, he smudges his family every morning. I can smell that sweetgrass burning. He smudged all his family, and he probably prays. So yeah, I'm hoping that my children, and I talk to them, and they know my wife is non-native, so they're half, but I tell them to be proud of who they are, be proud of the Nakota, and I'm hoping that I try to take them to all the feasts, different ceremonies that I can, and I'm hoping that they will, and I want them to learn, because that's, like I say, this was bestowed upon us by the Creator, and I think it's important for us as Indian people to carry this and right till we leave Mother Earth.
My name is Velma Goodfeather. I live on Standing Buffalo, Dakota First Nation, and I am a band member, and I also speak my Dakota language very fluently. And in the interview, The questions that I'm going to answer are going to be from the Dakota Sioux perspective.
Uppiginausun means child rearing in Cree. What is meant by this concept in the Dakota world? How does it direct a parent-child relationship?
In my Dakota Sioux language, I would say child rearing is wakayaja ichahwichapi. That's a very important concept for the Dakota people. We understand that when a child is born, it's very sacred. We also say wakayaja, and when I translate that word, it means the little sacred ones. We understand, and we should always believe in the child, as this child is very spiritual. We have to understand also to believe that bringing and raising up a child, we have different ways, with the understanding that a lot of times it's done with prayer and ceremonies. And one of the most important, I guess, part of a child, raising a child, is giving the child an Indian name in our language. And sometimes when a child carries this name, it's a spiritual name that's the child grows up with this name, with the belief that the spiritual aspect will help the child to grow up and, I guess, lead the right pathway in life. And it also helps them with the understanding and the knowledge that they are to learn things at an easier way.
Velma, how do you raise a child to lead a balanced life, a life of well-being?
I guess from the teachings of the old people, our belief system is when a child is born, at the moment that the child is delivered and taken by a midwife, we believe that the child already has an understanding with the 5 senses of the child. And we hold that in a very sacred way. We do ceremony, we pray when it's a thing that's called I Wicha Yukotapi, which means the cleansing of the openings of the nose, mouth, eyes, and ears. When this is done, it's done with prayer and ceremony. And we treat children in a very respectful and in a very humble way. That way, when they grow up, they learn respect, and in turn, they will learn how to live a good way of life. In the mainstream way, they talk about early childhood development, and early childhood development usually begins at 5-year-old. But in our Dakota way, we believe and we understand that it happens the moment a child is born, that they could hear and they could understand. And you would notice that maybe a baby is laying there crying, maybe a baby is in need of something. And us too, as parents, grandmothers, aunties, attending the baby, we know that the baby is crying because there's something wrong, whether it's mental, emotional, or spiritually. We have to totally immerse a child in our spiritual beliefs by praying with them, understanding that when they hear this, they'll be totally enveloped with the spiritual aspect of life.
What are the most important teachings to help guide a young girl in the transition to a young woman and a young mother?
In that area, it's a long process, I guess, to understand that when a woman is born, we believe that she's very special. She's born powerful because she is going to bring life onto Mother Earth. She's going to continue the life of people from one generation to the next. With that understanding, when a woman becomes pregnant, in our way, right from the first month, she announces that she is going to have a baby. Right to the 9th month, there are many things that we do in regards to, I would say, traditional prenatal care. The first month, the announcement is made that she is going to have the baby. The parents of the father and the parents of the mother come together with all relatives, and there's a big announcement made at that time, and then there's many things that happen. There's, we hold spirituality as a priority in our lives, so that's the first thing we do. The second month, there are things that we do and things that happen, and we never ever left a girl alone that's pregnant. There's always relatives, siblings, grandmothers to be there for her, to assist her. Third month, there are other things that we do that it makes the girl feel important, that she's doing something that's, I guess, a great deed in her life. She's bringing life onto Mother Earth. Each month we do many things, and it's all usually done with prayer and ceremony. When the 6th month comes, that's when we are allowed to sit with the mother, and she sits there, and we speak to the baby from the relatives. We tell the baby that, we are your grandma. We are expecting you to come. We are happy that you are going to come. This puts a lot of pride and happiness in the mother, because we also believe that when a girl is pregnant, she should be in an environment of happiness, an environment of positiveness, so that way the child, her feelings go on to the child. And if she's unhappy and she's hurt, we believe that's when a child is born. Today they say it's colic, but to us that it's not colic. The child, while within the mother, had all these hurt feelings, could understand the way the mother was feeling. And also a lot of hygiene is taught to the mother. A humble grandmother comes and helps deliver the baby. And we believe that the grandma talks in her language to that child. She'll say things like, "Takoja tayayahi," "Takoja, we're going to love you," "Taoni chidapta." We are going to love you, grandchild, and we are so happy that you're here with us. But that being said in a language, it increases the knowledge, and the child will be able to grow up that their priority is to their first language. At this time too, the umbilical cord is still connected to the mother, because it's a powerful thing that has just taken place, delivering a child. And when this is done, the nursing part comes, and that's where there's teachings for the father as well. The father is supposed to be the first one to do the suckling of the breast of the mother, and he opens the way for the milk to flow, and that's when the baby is nursed after that. It brings the family together in such a powerful bonding between the child, the father, and the mother. And that's how we believe in bringing a child onto Mother Earth.
Velma, if you had the opportunity to teach parents in raising their girls to young women, what advice would you give them?
teaching young parents. You know, a long time ago, young parents, there was the opportunity for them or available to them that the teachings came from the elders, teachings came from mothers, teaching comes from older siblings. Today, that has changed. Today, we tend to read everything from paper, from books on parenting. And a long time ago, that wasn't so. Everything was, the teachings were all oral. And to me, when you are going to teach parenting sessions or parenting classes, I believe that we have to go back to the traditional way of teaching, the traditional ways of how things were said and done. When we do that, we got to understand that as an elder, we have to smudge and pray before we teach our traditional ways. Because sometimes some of the things that we say, some of the things that we teach are very sacred to us First Nations people. It's difficult today, I always say, for young people because of the many distractions, the songs, the movies that come into play. You know, many of our young people or parents are forgetting the value of life. They're forgetting how to respect, I guess, humanity, how to respect old people, how to respect even children, the babies. They're losing all that respect. Today there are many sad stories pertaining to neglect of young babies, of young children. Today, my advice to young parents, I guess, is it's simple. Take the time to sit and listen to someone. Take the time to sit and ask questions. Be strong, be determined that you are going to be a parent.
When should a young woman become a mother?
Well, when a long time ago, in our Dakota way, we had a ceremony. It was called Wikoshke Shaich Iapi, which means when their first menstrual cycle, I guess, happened at 12-year-old. That's when there was a ceremony done with prayers to make sure that the young girl has reached womanhood. And along with that came many teachings, how to be a mother, how to be I guess, a relative to all her family, to get the understanding that now she was a woman and she had a big responsibility to serve. But my grandma always talked about young girls. She never mentioned age, but she said when they were prepared and ready in a spiritual way, that's when they got the understanding that it's time now to bear children. I've learned enough, I understand enough, and this was done through prayer and ceremony. Today, I hear or I know of young girls that are having children at the age of 14, 15 years old. And when I think about that, I think about our traditional teachings of becoming a mother, how to reach the age of becoming a woman. I think if we brought back those traditional ways, the young girls would understand that to me, it's too young, to have children at that age. we have grandmothers today that are 28-year-old. We have, but it's reality, it's happened. So the only thing we can do is pray and try to support these young girls as best as we can.
Who in the family or community is responsible for teaching girls or young women when they're beginning relationships or being married about their readiness to have a child?
Well, I think at this present time, it'll be the responsibility of the mothers and the grandmothers. But like I said, I mentioned before that some mothers are very, very young. And I've also mentioned that we've lost all our traditional teachings. So I think we have to start teaching young mothers and young grandmothers how to talk to their daughters, how to make them understand that in order to respect themselves, they have to learn and listen to what they are being told. And I really believe it's the responsibility. It's going to take a while. Many years ago, it was an everyday thing to talk to a young girl, to speak to her about becoming a woman, to talk. The teachings were all there, and it was always there for them. The grandmas were there, the mothers, the older aunties, they were all there to help. But today, that is not happening. And sometimes, as elders, we have to understand, we have to sit with these young girls and teach them that their way of life today is totally changed from long ago. And it is, I find it very disturbing, and I find it very hurtful to the young girls that don't hear somebody telling them that this is the way you should live, this is what you should do.
Velma, if you could talk to the young Dakota women, the young Dakota mothers, what would you say to them about parenting?
I guess the first thing that I would say to them is try to learn and listen to what the older people say, the older ladies say to you. You know, you have to understand that when you don't want to listen, or if you don't want to hear people what they're telling you, that's very disrespectful. And the first thing they have to understand is to respect. In my language, we say beginning or ending of a prayer, or just in a gathering, we say mitakuya awase, which means all my relatives. To us as Dakota people, it's a great meaning, and it's a small prayer in itself. When we say mitakuya awase, it means we are referring to all things that are living on Mother Earth. We are also referring to all the loved ones that are gone on to the spirit world. When you talk about that phrase or that mitakuya awase, it has a big meaning. To young parents, to young people, I'm hoping that, when gatherings are together, we should sit there and speak to them about this short prayer. It has a very, very respectful and a very helpful meaning in our language. And also we have to understand that sometimes I sit and I read books about parenting, about maybe personal development. And when you read, to me, you read it at that time, you remember it, you go away, then all of a sudden you forget about it. But this way, if it's said to you orally and you sit there and you listen in a respectful way, in a good way, things work out for you, and it seems to stay in your mind. When you remember something, you'll think, okay, that's where I heard this, and this is how it was said. This is how it was done. So to me, I think oral teaching is very important to us First Nations people. That was the way we learned many of our ways of life, our prayers, our spirituality. And I always like to refer to the young people that they have to be strong. They have to understand. They have to have that true belief in themselves and in everything around them. And that's the only way that they live a good way of life. It's very important that we learn the right way. We do and say things in a very good way and in a proper way. I've sat with my grandmother many times, and I've never heard her say, things in a demanding way. It was always in a gentle way. Takoja, you do this, Takoja. I'm telling you this because throughout life you're going to walk with what I'm telling you. And translation to Takoja is my grandchild.
Barry Henneque is my name. I'm a Plains Cree, a descendant of a proud people with a proud history. Histories that really not have been written down, but have been passed on orally to some. And me, I guess, being one that have received a lot of this history of our people. And I'm proud to be able to say that today. I speak fluent Cree. Ni pagaskinehiawan. Ni mio aten enehiawean, mio aten ni mamichin enehiawean. Manto hegimit matsun. God gave me life. And I'm proud of that. But God didn't only give me life. God gave everybody life. Manto. And I guess that's what I'm here for today. To talk about the tree spirit, the spirit of the tree, and the spirit of the flame. God's flame and God's tree, the tree of life. It's a sacred story. It was given in a vision to a person, a humble person, where he lost his eyesight and he lost his hearing while he fasted. If people don't know what a fast is, you go without food and water for 4 days and 4 nights. And this experience happened then. The eyesight went, like I said, first of all. The hearing went. Everything was dark. And a voice started speaking. And that voice said, "Do you see something in front of you?" And I said, "Yes, I do." Because in the distance in front, there was a light. A light, a faint light in the distance. But I wasn't talking with my mouth. I was talking with my mind. The voice said, "Yes, you're right. I'm going to bring that light closer, magnify that light closer." and the light was brought closer. He said, "Do you see it clearly now? What is it?" And I said, "It's a campfire. Kutawan." A campfire. And he said, "You're right, it is a campfire. Do you see what's inside that kutawan?" This is all in Cree, of course, and I'm just translating it to English. Do you see what's inside that kutawan, that campfire? And I looked hard, and there was something in that campfire. He said, "I'll bring it closer," which he did. And as it got closer, I could see a tree within that fire. He said, "Do you see what's in that campfire now, kutawan?" And I said, "Yes, it's a tree. A tree inside that campfire." And he said, "I'm going to magnify it even more for you." And he brought it close, and I could see the tree clearly. It had branches, it had roots, and where it come out of the ground, he said, that's Mother Earth. The roots are your ancestors, he said. Every root, the large roots, the smaller roots that branch out to the tiny roots, are all ancestors. Where the tree comes out of the ground, he said, you notice it's the widest, it's the largest of the trunk of the tree. There's nothing, there's no branches. And right at the bottom of where it comes out of the ground, there's flame around the tree. That flame is the Creator's flame. That's when a person chooses a part of the Creator's flame as a spirit entering the body. And that decides what you're going to be in the future, how you're going to be in the future. Are you going to behave like a male, or are you going to behave like a female? But the point of it is that there's no wrongdoing in a child. A child is pure, a child is clean, a child is holy when he's born. And that's when the spirit is most full. And that's why the tree is largest at the bottom where it comes out of the ground, Mother Earth. You choose where you were to be born. Everyone on earth chooses where they were going to be born, where they are born. Choose your mother and your father. Choose your ancestors, the roots of this tree, and how your ancestors lived, and what your ancestors honored. That's what you choose as a spirit. Everyone on earth goes through the same thing. The trunk of the tree, there's no branches. But there begins to be branches, he said. Those branches, the first branches are the biggest branches. And those branches stand for the first wrongs that a child begins to learn and begins to know. One branch can be swearing, hearing people swearing, adults swearing, other children swearing. a person can get caught up in that branch, and down that branch he goes, and he'll never get out of that branch. There's other branches. Prejudice. Don't play with that child. He's got dark skin. Don't play with him. Because he's got dark skin, he's not very good. He hears that and he gets caught up on that branch of prejudice. Those biggest branches, the first branches. And they start hating people because they have different skin, coloring. Every branch stands for something that someone learns or can learn. The wrongs of life. But it's the freedom of choice that God gave everybody. This tree of life. There's more branches on this tree as it goes up, and every branch stands for something that is wrong. The purpose of life is to attain pure spirituality, to retain pure spirituality like when you were born. And the way to do that is to follow the main trunk of the tree. Yes, it's hard. It's one hard thing to do, but that's the purpose of life. The trunk of the tree does get smaller, The spirit that you were born with does get smaller. Slowly. But many people don't even see that because they end up on these branches. And that's where their lives end. Alcohol is one of those branches. And all the separate little branches on that branch are the different deviations of their journey, their trail of life in that journey. Drugs is another branch. The things that they take today. All the wrongs. Every branch is one of those. He said, I'm going to show you something. This is a branch. And he took me on this one branch. And there was people at an exhibition, a fair, yelling and screaming and laughter and having fun. And he said, is that fun? And being a young man, I said, yes, it's fun. And he said, look further. In time on that branch, there was rides that were spinning around. People were getting dizzy in those rides. Some were wishing they hadn't been on those rides now. I could see. The rides stopped, they'd get off, and they'd be wobbling around, vomiting, some of them. And he said, now, is that treating their body right? Is that treating their spirit right? Is it fun now? And I said, no, it's not fun. I can see it's not fun anymore. He said, you're right. That affects their body. That affects their spirit. Even if they do it once, it affects them. But there's others that just live that kind of life. On this one branch, he said. Now, he said, I'm going to take you on another branch. So out of that branch, I went into another branch. And this branch was the nightlife of the city. And he said, is that fun? Does it look like they're having fun? There was young men, young women dancing. And I said, it looks fun. And he said, look further. He didn't admonish me or anything for saying it looked fun, like fun. But he said, look further. And he said, are they having fun? And I said, no, they're not. They're not having fun. And he said, you're right. said, we'll go back to the main trunk of the tree. So back to the main trunk of the tree. And he said, this is the journey that people have got to stay on. Straight, it's slow, and it's hard, but it's the most worthwhile for your spirit. The trick is to hack off the branches right at the beginning, to knock off all those branches all around the tree. You knock off the swearing branch, you knock off the prejudice branch, you knock off all the other branches that are wrong, like talking back to your mother, talking back to your father. That's a branch. All these branches. Knock all these branches off, including even these ones I've shown you, and just stick to the trunk of the tree. You have no branches on this tree, but for your spirit, it will retain its wholeness as much as possible. Finally to the top of the tree. And there was a word there in Cree that I'd never heard any time ever before till that time. And it was from the spirit, this grandfather's spirit, the tree spirit that was talking. The tip of this tree, he said, Chipwanaskok. Chipwanaskok is what he called the tip of that tree. And I'd never heard that word, even though I'm a fluent Cree speaker, and I speak old Cree and young modern Cree, but I'd never heard that word. But this was when I was younger, though. To reach this level, when you reach this level, following the main trunk of the tree, you become one with God. You've attained spirituality. But not very many people make this. Not very many people on earth. The whole earth, not very many people attain this. But there has been some in the past, and there has been some in the recent, and there will be some more in the future that will attain that. Sainthood, in a way, is what he was talking about. But you become one with the Creator and a worker for the Creator in some form or fashion. But he said there's still a few little branches close to the top. He said you might be 80, 90 years old, and your wife, companion, might be a few years younger than you. And she talks to somebody, and you just get enraged and you get mad. Jealousy at that old age. Kakway tamun. He said that little branch will hold you back. Not right at the top, not the top yet, but close to it. He said, and why I'm telling you this is because this is my proof to you that I'm telling you the truth. That little bit of jealousy holds you back, but finally your body is so withered down with age that you, at the end of that little branch, your body gives out, and you meet that thing called death. So you didn't quite make it. You didn't quite make it. But, he said, at the end of every one of those branches, and the side branches, there's places there where the spirits remain. For the lower branches, the spirits remain there for time and time and time and time and time and time. Millions, thousands of years, hundreds of years. But for the one up there, the little branch, the old man that faded out before he could overcome that little jealousy because his wife talked to somebody. At the end of there's a place too for the spirits at those branches. Those are the only ones that are given the chance to be reborn soon. And why I'm saying this is because you've heard your old people say in the past, you're all related. relate to everybody. You're related to them. And this is the reason why. Because that spirit has got a chance to be reborn fairly soon. That spirit is given a chance to choose another mother, another father, somewhere on earth. Spirit of fire keeps you as you go on that journey. When you're born, there's a thing called waipan, soft spot on the top of the head. As long, even if you live to 110 years old or 115, you'll always have a pinhole there. That's where your spirit will come in and out of. That's the flame, the lodge keeper for your lodge. He'll always be with you, unless you abuse your body with one of these branches. You take things into your body that you shouldn't take in. Your Creator's flame, your spirit, it's all the same flame, the God Spirit. He rejects what you do to your body. If people intake drugs, alcohol of different kinds, or whatever, your spirit, the Creator, begins to reject your body when that happens. And that's when, he said, your spirit leaves, your Creator's spirit leaves, and starts hovering around. And there is malevolent spirits out there, and that's when they come in, and they see an empty lodge, and they charge in and take over your empty lodge. The beauty of being a child with no wrongdoing, or even only getting to the stage of those first branches, or even not paying attention to any of those first branches, because the mother and the father, unigi gumauk, are saying, don't pay attention to that child, because he's teaching you wrong. I heard him say something that he shouldn't be saying. So don't listen to that. So as a child, your mother and father have saved you from that branch. And as young parents, then the same thing themselves. The values that they've learned from their mother and their father, from their grandmother and their grandfather, and the values that the ancestors had from those roots, the honor and integrity that they had from history past to today, that they're still carrying on physically, then they begin to carry those values of honor and integrity and respect with their children.